Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to Greg Morton Outdoors. Today we're going to do another one of those intense gear reviews. And today we're going to talk about the tent I used on the Appalachian Trail last year. That's the 6 Moon Designs Lunar Solo. Well, I really wasn't anticipating doing a video today. You know, it's kind of windy, it's overcast, even though this morning it was really nice out. But I thought, you know, what the hell, it's been a little while since I did a video, and, you know, let's go out and shoot one. Well, I bought this tent actually before I even thought about going on the Appalachian Trail. In fact, I got it for when I section hiked the Collegiate East portion of the Colorado Trail a couple years ago. But before I get into how it performed, let me do the boring, you know, nerd thing and throw up all the statistics about it. So here we go. Oh, I didn't know that. Very interesting. So bottom line up front, what do I think about this tent? I think for the price, you would be hard-pressed to find a better one-person ultralight backpacking tent. There we go. What do I like about the tent? Of course, I mean what I said, the price. It's, I think, extremely reasonable for what you get. The second thing, the room. Oh my God, this is almost like a 1.5 person tent. You will have more than enough room for yourself, even if you're using a 25-inch pad, plus all your gear inside. Many nights in the rain, I slept with everything inside of there. You know, third, it's a pretty rugged little tent. For it not being made out of Dyneema, I put some serious miles on this thing, put a bit of wear and tear on it, and the only thing I ended up with were a couple of very small holes on the floor, which I patched with some nylon repair tape made by Tenacious Tape. And lastly, you know, the fourth thing I like about the tent is, you know, once you set it up a few times and get a good feel for it, you can have this thing set up in less than 2 minutes. No lie, I'm not bullshitting you on this one. Absolutely, you can get it set up less than 2 minutes and you're ready to go. Now, what didn't I like about this tent? Well, like all single wall tents, condensation. This thing had a tendency to build up condensation. Even though you've got this vent up here on the top, it really didn't do much. Even with one door open, the side that wasn't exposed, you would get condensation down there. So a lot of times you would have to pull this other side up out of the way to get the airflow throughout the entire thing. So if you didn't have both doors totally up and out of the way, you're going to get some condensation. Now, with that in mind, the entire AT is wet. I mean, from the moment you put foot on the trail to the moment you end up in Katahdin, or vice versa if you're southbound, everything is wet. I mean, it's humid, the ground's wet, you get a lot of rain, the whole 9 yards. So I knew people that even had double wall tents, still got condensation on the fly. So they had to dry that out too. And speaking of condensation and things being damp, if you set this up incorrectly in the rain, you're screwed. So the way you should set it up is the back of the tent should be facing the direction of wind. My first storm, I didn't do that, and I got flooded. I actually set it up with one of the sides facing into the wind and did not work well. So it is kind of tricky in that sense. Luckily for me, for all the rain I encountered there, only 3 times did this really wet out, and all 3 times I set it up incorrectly. Once that I just talked about, a second time I set it up, and as it turned out, the terrain kind of funneled that way, and I had a river flowing underneath of this. Luckily, I was at a shelter, so I just left the tent out there in the rain, and I got in the shelter. And the last time was at the base of Killington Mountain, where the shelter is there. Myself and this other person, Tenacity, who also had one of these tents. We set up on a platform because there was no other place to set up a tent. And setting up a trekking pole tent on one of those platforms up there in New England, you're not going to get the best pitch of your tent. And because of that, both of our tents wetted out. So we just went down to the shelter and slept in there. You know, and the last thing that I don't like about the tent, and it's probably true of a lot of trekking pole tents of this style, is sometimes you really got to play with the pitch of it. To include, you know, using a stick like this to run your guy lines over to raise up your bathtub floor. But at the same time, that can be a good thing. I know, like the Z-Packs tents, you can adjust your floor, I think, from the inside. I think they have adjustable tensioners there. It doesn't happen with this tent. So what you can do is, like I said, run your guy lines, which I'll show you in a second, over top of a stick like this, and that'll actually raise up your bathtub floor. I had to do that a few times because of rain and everything else, which now makes your interior living space smaller, but you know what? If it keeps you dry, then who cares? But let me show you what I'm talking about. So you more or less just take a stick here, loosen up your line, put the stick underneath like this. Actually, let me shorten this a little bit for demonstration purposes. And then you pull it tight. So what that does now is it raises your bathtub floor up higher. So if there's any water coming in from the rain, if it's blowing hard like that, any splash up is going to hit that the bathtub instead of hitting onto the mesh, because when the mesh gets wet, it will drip down inside your tent. I had that happen a few times. Really nothing major, because all I did is I put a buff in that corner and that soaked up the water. And while we're up, let me show you around the inside. So the floor is a floating floor, and you can see what happens as the wind hits it. Kind of blows it all around there. I've got some stuff in there kind of holding it down. But you can see how large it is. Once you get inside here, it is a pretty spacious, roomy interior. And you can see where I did my repair right there. But like I said, it's very spacious. So your pad fits right in here, and this triangle portion over in the back, there's plenty enough space for all of your gear. In fact, if you were like hiking with your dog could fit in there as well. Now there is just one door here, which can be a good thing or a bad thing. But you know, that's all you kind of need. It is a one-person tent. But that's the inside. Well, I'll show you around the outside of the tent. So you can see here what it looks like when it's all buttoned up. And this, I think, is a really cool, innovative idea. This hook here is held to the main guy line by, I believe it's called a Prusik notch, or a Prusik knot. If I'm wrong, let me know. But if you want more ventilation, you can slide it up out of the way. And you can do that from inside of the tent as well. I've done that. Just reach out, grab it, and slide it up. It's a nice little feature. And this is good too, especially if it's while it's raining out, to help cut down on the condensation on the inside. Look at that wind blow. Yeah, cut down the condensation on the inside. You can pull it up like that and still get rain protection. We'll pull that back down. You know, you've got 6 main guy lines with 2 supplemental. And I just took my own cordage and put on there, just a decent length, so you could tie it up in various configurations, like off a tree or straight out to a bush. But this is what it looks like from the outside here, as long as my camera will catch up with me as I'm walking. And you see how that's raised up there as compared to that corner. But yeah, that's the outside of the Lunar Solo there. It looks like it's doing okay in all this wind too. Well, there we go. That's just a quick little down and dirty on the Lunar Solo. I gave you specifications. I'll put a link down below. In fact, I think the link's in my bio anyway, down below. Highly recommend the tent. Are there better ones out there? I'm sure. Have I used them? No. I'm only giving you 2 cents on this one here. It performed very well on the Appalachian Trail for the time I was on the Colorado Trail. It was fantastic. I do believe that single wall tents like this perform better out west here, where it's more arid and it's not as humid. You know, you don't get that condensation unless you camp next to a stream or a lake or something like that. But I think they probably perform better out here than on the East Coast. Would I use it again? Absolutely. In fact, when I finish up the Colorado Trail this year, the segments I'm going to knock out before I thru hike the remainder, I'm using this tent. I have no reason to swap it out for something new. And honestly, if I had to get a new tent, I'd probably get another Lunar Solo. The other thing with this tent, it does not come seam sealed, which, come on, Six Moon Designs, you can do a little bit better than that. Yeah, it doesn't come seam sealed, so you can either do it yourself, or I thought, what the hell, I'm going to leave it up to the pros and not risk anything to save a couple of bucks. And I let them seam seal it for like $40. For me, the peace of mind was well worth it versus me, who never seam sealed a tent before, trying it and possibly failing with it. So, okay, I'll pay them the money. Couple last things about the tent. For a ground sheet, I use the Polycryo window insulation sealant, whatever, the sheets that you can put over your windows and heat seal. I used one of those, which lasted all the way up to Virginia, and I couldn't find a replacement. I went to Lowe's and Home Depot and stuff like that, could not find a replacement for it, which really kind of bummed me out. And for stakes, and I've done videos about these stakes before, I use the Priya Outdoor Products Spiral Y stake. It's the same thing as an MSR Groundhog for a fraction of the frickin' price. MSR, their stuff is just too much money. It is. You get like 10 of these for like 18 bucks. And the cool thing is, if you're red-green colorblind, and if you drop one of these in the grass, you'll have no problem seeing it. Unlike the MSR ones, which are red. I did replace my stakes because, yeah, they're a little chewed up after over 2,000 miles. But truth be told, only 2 of them had a slight bend in them. And that's actually going through some seriously tough ground. But yeah, only 2 of them had like a little curve to them. Still used them, still work fine. So highly recommend these stakes. For the price, you can't go wrong. And I'll put a link for these below also. And I did have to replace the bag, the stuff sack, for the tent, the one it came with. It fell apart. So I just got this Sea to Summit, roll top dry bag. Got this to use instead. And, worked fine. No biggie, no major issue with it. So that does it for our intense gear review of the Six Moon Designs Lunar Solo and how it performed on the AT. If you have one, let me know in the comments below. If you have questions, please ask away. All right, hey, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please give me a thumbs up. And, why don't you consider subscribing if you haven't already, and click the notification bell so you know when I put out some new videos, which I'm still trying to do better on that. Oh, well. All right, thanks for watching. Talk to you soon.